War!
Hey, thank you for joining the Escape With Me Book Club. Escape with me, Sam Reiner.
And me, Keira.
Into our most recent read. Come with us as we evade reality and go into detail about our new book. We'll be covering the book from beginning to end, so there will be spoilers. Today we are going somewhere in the United States, possibly California.
I hadn't actually thought about location-wise.
The internet says it sounds a lot like the northern mountains of California.
Right.
But obviously the world has been destroyed, so there is no California. But it is kind of obvious it's the U.S.
Yeah.
Published May 25th, 2004. Yeah. The People of Sparks is the second book in the Book of Ember series. Having solved the puzzle of how to leave the dying Ember, they find themselves with a new problem: how to integrate into the world outside. The small town of Sparks does its best to help, but as tensions rise, will the old practices come back? Will war take more than they have to give? And could the city of Lena's mind be the place for Ember to flourish? Questions. Background on this. So I read the first 3 books as a kid. I owned all 4 of them, and I don't know why I never picked up Diamond of Darkhold, but I didn't. I read the first 3, and 1 and 2 are in order, and then 3 is a prequel of, well, how did we get into this situation, which is handled, in my memory, is handled better than some other YA books of the time. YA dystopians. So, not sure why, but I liked the other 3. We ended up reading the first book for the podcast in 2021 and watched the movie at the same time because there's a movie. And for whatever reason, apparently there wasn't enough tension and they decided to actually have monsters. I think it's way scarier in the book where you don't know what's out there and there could be monsters, but maybe there's not. But in the book, they're like, nah, man-eating moles.
It's so funny you bring up the movie. I was tempted to rewatch the movie. I have seen the movie. I'll talk about my history with the books in just a second. I did see the movie back in 2008 or 2009 when it came out. I rented it from Blockbuster. And I do not remember much about the movie, which is strange because I do remember a bit about the book from when I read it. I do think it's interesting, though. The movie is not on streaming anywhere. It also never had a Blu-ray release over here in America. It had a German Blu-ray release only.
Really? In 2021, it was on something. I don't know what it was on. I don't remember at this point, but it was. So it sounds like it got taken off.
Was it? Do you remember? I don't have my phone handy, so I can't look this up. Was it a Walden Media? Was it a Disney type production? It wasn't Disney, so it wouldn't be on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
But Walden Media was the distributor at the time making all these adaptations of children's books.
Okay, City of Ember. It was a 2008 film.
Yeah.
The weird thing about the movie is it's both exactly what the book is and completely not what the book is at the same time.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it, but I feel like so much of this book is atmosphere.
Yes. Or at least the first book.
Yeah, definitely the first book. And I feel like any 5 or 6 different directors would adapt the book in a different way. And we just happened to get one that wasn't very good.
Yeah, this was directed by Gil Keenan. It was written by Carolyn Thompson, and it was produced by Walden Media and Playtone.
Yeah.
And then distributed by 20th Century Fox and Summit Entertainment.
Okay.
So technically, it is a Disney movie.
It is technically Disney, yeah. So it would have been on like Hulu or Disney Plus, and it is not. Okay. But yeah, no, this is 2008. So this is several years after Blu-ray is close to the premium format by this point. DVD is on its way out within the next 2 years. No Blu-ray release.
If you want to know how far off streaming it is, you can buy it from Fandango or Apple TV for $3.99, and it is on nothing else.
Wow. Yeah. But we're not here to talk about the movie. I just thought it was interesting to note. Unless you're willing to shell out $3, it's hard to come by this film. But my relationship with the book specifically is similar to Sam's. I read the first one when I was a kid and maybe a year or so before the movie came out. And enough that when I watched the movie, I was able to be like, that wasn't what I expected. But around that time, I read book 1. It was really good. And I'm going to get to book 2. And then I never got to book 2 because being a kid, time sneaks away from you. And when your ADHD ADHD, you're split your attention over a lot of different things. And that's just what so happens to be my life at that time. So here I am 20 years later.
Rectifying the situation.
I hold in my hands a paperback, very, very used copy called The Books of Ember. This is the first 3 books. So the 2 in the initial saga with our 2 main characters, and then the prequel, not the 4th book yet. I'll have to figure that up separately, but I want to make a note. This book is a Borders exclusive right there on the cover.
Wow.
I got it for $2 off eBay. It arrived very worn up. It has gotten more worn up because I've been reading it while traveling. And yeah, so Borders exclusive in my hands.
Wow, you're pulling Blockbuster, you're pulling Borders.
Blockbuster, Borders. We're going back to the year 2008.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yes.
That's also kind of funny. It's like how with the Meant to Be series, the box set doesn't have the last book either.
Right. I mean, in this case, it's definitely a case of they're building up to the 4th one. They're like, the 4th one's coming, so get caught up with this Borders discount edition or whatever. But yeah, no, this is published in, doesn't say in the front, but it's in the lead up to that 4th book whenever that one came out. And if the 3rd one is in 2006, I assume book 4 is right around the time of the movie or something like that.
Probably. I don't have it right off my notes, but that's crazy. All the nostalgia.
God bless you, Borders. You missed every day.
But for this book specifically, we're looking at an age level mid-lit. Honestly, these books are pretty low-key. I'd be comfortable giving it to most kids, honestly. I'd be comfortable reading it to my kid.
Right.
Even before you're able to read, I think it's pretty tame.
It's tame in terms of there's no aggressive content so much, but there is thematic stuff that I think is...
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see how different kids react to it. We'll get into it.
Yeah, our content warning for this, just so you know going in, you do have death, blood, animal abuse, and death, and there is some graphic violence near the end.
Sure.
But that's kind of it on content warning stuff. There is definitely some deep thematic stuff, but at the same time, you know how when you watch a 4 kids movie, like Safe for the Whole Family type movie,
right?
If you're competent, of course, but you'll watch it as a kid and you pick up the really obvious things, but then like as you grow up, you notice more and more things and you start to understand maybe some nuance in it. Maybe Ariel shouldn't just be running around by herself because she's 16, you know? Maybe you start to be like, oh, I understand where Triton's coming from. I don't agree with the actions he took.
Right.
But I understand how we got here and what's going on. So I think that's the case for this book. I think it has entry levels for a lot of things. As an adult, I definitely could pull some stuff out.
Right. I would say my big takeaway reading this now as an adult is that the prose is very simple. Maybe, yeah, 4th grade upward is probably the suggested age level. And so the prose is very simplistic. It's very straight to the point, very easy to read. And I think that's great because it's a gateway into some of the deeper thematic stuff that's going on, which it might not be the most groundbreaking version of this story, but I feel like for kids who are looking for something that goes a little more beneath the grain, is a bit explores the world relations and how civilizations find themselves in times of strife. I think this is a great stepping stone towards broader pieces of literature.
Yeah, you have to respect the fact that the author is clearly using this as a gateway into the conversation.
Yes.
She understands who her audience is, what age they're at, what emotional development they're at, and she meets them there.
Right.
This isn't mid-lit just because juvenile writing. This is mid-lit with a purpose.
Exactly.
I think she does a really good job with it. So, since you hadn't read this book, judge a book by its cover. I mean, it's hard for me to know what I thought. I was so young when I read the book, and it's been such a long time. But looking at it now, it's very obviously, hey, we're out in the real world and we're trying to grow something new. But to you, having not read the book, what were you thinking going in? I mean, obviously you have an omnibus, but have you seen the cover?
Yeah, I have seen the cover because, again, for years I had set aside my old paperback copy of the book intending to read it. I often get the two conflated in my head because I more clearly in my head can picture the cover of the third one just because it's so distinctive for reasons we'll get into on that episode. But I did kind of assume just based on the cover that even though it's called The People of Sparks and there is the slightest inclination of them meeting other people in the end of the first book, I think. I can't remember because I literally went straight from book 1 into book 2. I can't remember if the divide is in the end of the first one or...
So the divide is we get to the end of the book. They're like, crap, we can't go back up the river, so we need to get a message to them. They throw a message down into, there's this opening where they can see Ember, and they throw a note down, and the book ends with their surrogate mom picking up the piece of paper and finding it.
Okay, yeah, then. So yeah, my assumption, obviously based on the title, The People of Sparks, they're going to meet people. And I don't know, I'm a very visual person, so a lot of this book, and I'll get into it in terms of what I think makes this book series so unique is the visual palette that the setting of the story lends itself to. I did kind of assume that there would be some people, but for the most part it would be, they'd be learning to farm. They would be in the weeds themselves just because of this very distinct image of the green against the soil and all that with the S made out of vines. I feel like the People of Sparks and the City of Sparks was even a little more established and a little more functioning, for lack of a better word, than I anticipated. I mean, we'll get into the nitty gritty and how maybe they're not functioning spectacularly after all. But I think I was expecting something a bit more here, but us farmers or whatever, like a bunch of rural folk, rather than, more buildings and slightly more structural organization than I anticipated.
Yeah, honestly, having this conversation with you has unlocked a childhood memory for me. So even in this conversation, I am remembering being surprised that they met a village. In my brain, I think I viewed it's like the City of Ember, the civilization is dying. And so City of Sparks was going to be, all right, we're creating something new.
Right.
And so I think I was expecting them to come into the world and them create the City of Sparks, and not that it was already a established civilization.
Right. I think the big surprise for me along those same lines is sort of, not to get too far into the narrative, but just how the book opens.
Oh yeah, with the random kid.
Well, no, not even that. I expected there to be a bit more of a divide. I expected us to literally be, we got to get the people out of Ember, and maybe the pair of them run into the other people and are like, can you help us get all these people out of Ember? But I like that the book opens with all these people swarming out of Ember. I think that's an interest. That caught me off guard at first. I was like, oh no, we're not getting a lengthy explanation. We're getting all these details being relayed to us by the characters who have made their way out of Ember already. We're not going down and seeing all the people, the surrogate mom and all them escaping from Ember. They are already on their way out. And on their way out, they're like, oh, by the way, the mayor's dead, which was kind of funny.
Yeah, that was wild. He dies in the movie because a mole eats him because he goes into his little like whatever, and it's supposed to be a message about gluttony or whatever. But yeah, in this one, so he has an issue with gluttony in the movie more so. They really focus on the food portion, but I don't think that's necessarily fair because he wasn't just hoarding food. He was hoarding a bunch of other stuff too. And so I think the book is actually tilted toward greed. Not that you can't be gluttonous for things that aren't food, but there's a thin line between them. And his attitude was more greedy to me than gluttonous.
Yeah, right.
I feel like gluttony implies some sort of pleasure that you get out of it, where I feel like greed is more like of a compulsion.
I definitely think it's handled better in the book. Not to say that kids today who might read this book, it might help them form some opinions about how the world is run or anything like that, but specifically focusing it on broader beyond just food, hoarding all these resources and keeping them away from the people and damaging society as a result of that, I feel is a much more well-rounded and more thematically appropriate way of approaching it. The less cynical part of my brain is like, oh, maybe they dumbed it down just to food in the movie because that's easier to explain to kids. You should be greedy with your food.
It also just feels like the 2000s fat people are morally bankrupt.
Yes. I was about to say it's a double whammy of corporate notes being like, well,
Because it's straight up Bill Murray.
Yeah.
It's Bill Murray. And he's just shoving food in his face all of the time. And it just feels like that really toxic 2000s skinny is good, so go eat cotton balls so you don't eat food.
Yeah.
And fat people are just morally bankrupt because you have allowed yourself to be fat.
100%.
And so coming back to that was a little uneasy.
100%. Yeah. It's rampant with that in the 2000s.
One thing I will say, this read around, because we read the first book and then this book back to back. Oh, the friend Lizzie. Awful, awful girl.
She sucks. Yeah.
She sucks so bad. But I do like, there's a concept in this that is very quickly brushed over. And as an adult, I picked it up better. One of the people that worked with the mayor is this dude named Lopper. He's a bad dude. He's awful, but he's benefiting Lizzie. And so she dates him.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a really interesting lesson because even after she found out what he's like, the ramifications to the society of what they were doing, and even hearing how the reason that they died was they were going to steal a boat and run away and screw all the rest of the Ember, and they ended up drowning because of it, she still walks around with a black band on her arm mourning him.
Right. These are humans at the end of the day.
Well, A, these are humans, but B, there's this really interesting concept where you hear that someone is accusing your uncle or your grandma or your mom or your dad.
Right.
Or whoever it is, or you're insulting my cousins, I'm going to step up because this is my family. But also, if you think critically about it, bad people have family too. Bad people can be married, can have loved ones, can have people that care about them. And Lizzie is just, honestly, the ditziest whatever. But she is out there acting like he's a martyr, when in reality, that's not what he did. And I don't know, to me, that was such an interesting add into this children's book to be like, A, everyone will probably have someone that will mourn them, and that should be considered. But at the same time, just because someone says they're a good person, just because they're related to this person, just because they're dating this person, you still need to look at their actions for what they are and the ramifications of what they are.
Right.
Which leads perfectly into this book when frickin' what's his face? What is his name? Tick.
Tick.
His name's Tick Hassler. How is there not a more perfect name for this idiot? Okay, I'm gonna be so honest about this book. It took you a little while to read because you have life stuff going on.
Yes.
It took me a little while to read it because honestly, it was a little painful.
Painful how? Yeah, I'm interested.
This is miscommunications. The book leads to war.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a lot of, whoops, I should have said this, tee sort of thing. Yeah.
For example, later on, a huge thing that they get pissed off about is they don't feel like they're getting enough food, and the people of Sparks, people of Sparks end up taking them, and they're like, hey, we're going to train you for 6 months, and then you need to go off, which we'll talk about that in a minute, but that is their deal. It's like, we're going to train you, and then in 6 months, you're going to go create your own village, and that's the best we can do. And so they're trying to feed, suddenly they go from a village of 300 to a village of 700, and they have a food store, and the people of Ember, they keep saying, oh, we don't have food, and then Tick is like, well, I went in there, and they have all this food that they haven't been feeding us, and we, as people who have been about the earth, know that that's winter storage.
Right.
That they can't grow food all year around. But nobody in Ember knows about winter. They don't even know what rain is. I'm a little impressed with how little it rains.
Right.
It doesn't rain until the very end of the book, and they've been there for months, which is crazy for the geolocation that we're in.
Right.
So it's just really painful. It's a bunch of miscommunications for that reason. City of Ember doesn't know what's going on, and it's so much miscommunication back and forth.
Yes.
And that is what is fueling this conflict and very little else. Like I said, it needs to be simplified for the kiddos. Everyone in this book is honestly trying, except for Tick.
Yeah.
The people of Sparks are trying, and the people of Ember are trying, but it doesn't end well. And we have one troublemaker, which is Tick. But in real life, we would probably have more bad people.
more than one. There's more than one troublemaker. There's also, I mean, he's a very little kid.
Oh my gosh, I hate him. I hate Taurus. I hate him with a burning passion.
He's a kid. He's a kid.
He's the worst. Okay, listen, I have been around a lot of children. He's 10.
Yes, he's obnoxious.
He's obnoxious. I can't. He is also the problem.
But also, I read it as he's very much on the spectrum. He is just has his thing, has his people, does not GAF about anything else sort of thing.
Like, there's a certain way to act, and if you don't act that way, you're the worst.
100%.
Maybe that is something I'm not considering, but at the same time...
I think the bigger thing with this book, and you touched on it a little, is it's a little bit of a step down from the predecessor. We'll talk about our full opinions as we go through or whatever. But I think the simplicity and joy of the first book, and a lot of this is just coming off of me immediately reading the first book and then jumping into the second book, is that the first one is such a fun setup and puzzle, and you're figuring things out as you go along. And there's just kind of the ominous spiel at the end where we sort of get a sense of the broader picture of the world. And this is our first steps into that world, which inevitably makes it a tough act to follow what's going on in the first one. And inherently, just because there is less of a yes, you're getting a sense of what happened. Yes, you're going to the city or the ruins of the city. Yes, you're seeing the state of the people of Sparks and the city of Sparks and getting an idea of the literal fallout of what happened before. But I do think because the simplistic mystery element of the first one and the sort of not treasure hunt per se, but the overarching mystery and the letter and unscrambling it and getting out.
And realizing you're underground.
Yeah, the atmosphere of being underground is just such a great setup. It is a tough act to follow. And so I feel like maybe I was less harsh on this than I would have been otherwise, just because I know it is part 2 of 4. I know I'm going to get a prequel and I'm going to get a finale. And so I'm willing to give it a bit more leeway because it is the middle chapter. And I feel like historically the middle chapter is a harder piece to pull off in some ways than the finale, because you've got a bridge to, or in this case, more than 2 bookends.
I think you have a really good point there, because I think the reason this is so difficult, it's written in 3 parts, is because the first book does have so much going on.
Yeah.
It has world building where we're getting used to this weird world, but then there's this puzzle that we're doing, and there's some other weird stuff going on, and her grandma dies, and there's a lot of heart and emotional moments, and all of it builds up to this really big reveal at the end of, oh my gosh, Ember was underground.
Right.
And so there was a lot going for a simplistic book with 18 chapters, maybe. It had a lot going on, where this one only has the conflict.
Yeah.
And it's a longer book than the last one, too.
It's longer. It's 2 groups of people miscommunicating and tensions flaring up, and then the kids stepping in to save the day. And there is a part of me that if I viewed these in a vacuum and this was just the follow-up to the first one, I would have been a little disappointed. I gave it good grace because, again, I know there's more to come. But I alluded to earlier, I'm someone who thinks very visually, especially while I read. And the first book has such a distinct visual flair in my mind.
It's got a vibe.
If we're readapting these into movies, they're animated. This world is made intricate animated designs, very stylized. The immediate color palette that comes to mind just knowing the setting is your oranges and browns and fluorescent. And there's so much to play with there. Versus this one where at first I thought I had a general sense of earth and colors and the brown and the fog of the city they go to. But it does jump from a very specific sort of narrative that from a mystery overarching the first book to less of a mystery. Slightly. You journey to the city, you wonder what's going on there, you meet some characters, but the meat of this book is a conflict between 2 people, which is, again, very good for exploring these themes with a younger audience. But as a reader, especially as an adult reader reading a book for 4th graders, there is a part of me that's like, yeah, but I kind of liked when it was an adventure mystery, though.
Yeah, I think one of the really big downfalls of this is what part of the fun of Ember is the world building.
Right.
And so you have this amazing concept for a society, amazing how the economics works, how the mystery portions work, how the society has kept things going. That is part of the fun. The world is a character, which is what you would expect in a sci-fi or speculative fiction.
Right.
That's just California. Like, all the mysteries in it are Ember not knowing how the world works. And you're like, oh, obviously it's this. And then it's just painful when why don't the Sparks people just tell them stuff? But I mean, you don't know what you don't know. I have so many thoughts about how they've set up this thing. I know these people were not prepared to teach an entire society, but the fact that the basis of their teaching is you're gonna do something different every single day, that's not how any of this works. Like, you look into society and doctors, I mean, they have rounds, they learn the basics of things, but they specialize.
Right.
For a reason. You're not calling an all-in-one plumber and electrician service. Farmers specialize. Everyone specializes. Whatever field you're in, if you're a marketer, you're gonna know stuff, but you're specialized. That's why we call people different titles. You do different things. And so that in and of itself was so bonkers of a solution to me. Also, the fact that they're like, hey, we'll keep them around for 6 months and then let them go in winter. I know you're in a suckish situation, but what are you doing?
Right. And you got to approach these things with a shred of empathy just because, like, they're already not especially well off. They have some resources.
This is the first year where they're not going to be panicking about winter and people dying in winter.
Right. Exactly.
Which is totally fair.
Yes. So they're caught off guard and they're already in a post-apocalyptic situation from the get-go. So there is a sense of scrambling, like, oh, crap, what do we do? What do we do? And then it all comes down to 4 leaders who we are privy to their meetings, and half of them are sort of wishy-washy, and it's like, oh, I don't know. Sort of
AKA one of them. There's 3 of them.
Yeah, there's one who just can't commit to anything.
Yeah.
And so there is a little something to be said about all the power being in these 3 people, one of whom won't even talk to his nephew, hasn't talked to his nephew in years.
When you live in the same village, what are you doing?
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's structured in an interesting way, but yeah.
You come to find out that they live underground, and I feel like that should cause some sort of, oh, so you know nothing. Our children in school know more about the current Earth than you do. Why were none of them being educated? I keep getting stuck on how they go about this, like in the most, let's be the least helpful to these people as possible. Job shadow. We should have someone job shadowing the leaders and becoming the leaders and stuff. And then we should have people learning how the soil works and how the earth works and all this stuff. And like, you should have,
Right. Logically, that does make sense, but there is a part of me that feels like maybe the author's intent was that they see the people of Ember as the others.
Yeah.
They are an other being. It doesn't even occur to them to teach their human beings, to teach them the basics, because these are aliens from outer space. These are foreign invaders sort of thing. It doesn't even occur to them to see them almost as human in some ways, which I don't know if they get specifically that descriptive with it in the prose.
No, that's the vibe.
Yeah, that's the vibe they're going for. And as to whether you see that as analogous to ongoing discussions about immigration and migrants, I won't get into it too much on this podcast, but I feel like that's definitely what the author was leaning into. So
yeah, it's just, let's be honest. If the people of Sparks were more empathetic, we would not be having this issue. Not that they would not have issues.
Right.
We absolutely could, but the way the fight and the conflict is set up is the people of Sparks viewing them as...
They're pig-headed. They're stubborn, yeah.
Yeah. They think the Emberites are both the stupidest people that exist, but also high and mighty, because they'll be like, oh, back in Ember, we had electricity. And then they just get pissy about it, because they're like, well, you guys are stupid.
Yeah, they don't attempt to bridge the gap, which is the heart of the conflict. And it's a very simple way of encouraging in kids empathy towards people who are immigrants who are coming from another land or another world or anything like that.
Or just the people around them.
or the people, other human beings around you. And so again, thinking of the intended audience, I think it does help just to really kind of exaggerate the pigheadedness of the people of Sparks, because it's a book that they're going for a 7th grade or less.
This is probably their first introduction to this type of material. Absolutely.
Especially if you're reading it in late elementary school. You might not have read books that are strictly about
socio-political issues.
Exactly. Different groups of people coming together and the conflicts that can arise from that, and the empathy that
living in a world with limited resources and
exactly,
honestly, limited patience.
Sure.
But yeah, we don't even need to go too far. I remember going on a family trip and hanging out with my cousins, and I had cousins my age, but there were cousins that were significantly younger than us.
Yeah.
So we were like 16, 17, but I'm watching these 7-year-olds and they're handing out popsicles, right?
Yeah.
And 2 of them get a red popsicle and 1 of them gets a blue popsicle. And that is enough prompting for the next hour for the other children to exclude the child that got a blue popsicle.
Oh my God.
Obviously, I mean, we stopped it, but it doesn't take much for kids. You're not born with empathy.
Right.
It's something we create and we learn, and it's a beautiful thing that humans can learn, but not everyone does.
Yeah, empathy is something we have to actively push and encourage in our kids.
And I do think there's something going with Torin. I do think there is something good about Lena not liking him, period, straight out.
Right.
But then still choosing a kind option. And she's not doing a kind option like some people do where you self-sacrifice your own interest. She's in a situation where the action she did cost her nothing, but it was hard because she didn't want to do it. And so she's not overextending herself to help someone that is actively harming her, which is a whole different issue for another book, probably.
Right.
But she is legitimately in a situation where all it costs to do this kindness is her pride.
Right.
And I think that's a good message because kids are mean. Kids are brutal.
Kids are brutal.
And they can be the most innocent and kind, but they can also be awful to each other. Because like I said, they just haven't developed that empathy. It's something that takes a really long time to cultivate. And even as adults, like, aren't we constantly still finding new experiences that other people have had and learning from those experiences? Just because we didn't go through them ourselves. Like the whole thing about reading is you learn new people's experiences all the time and you gain empathy from them. So that I really like. But as an adult,
yes,
this book is painful. It's hard because the last book, as an adult, I could read it over and over and over again. I love the mystery. I love the world building. I love how it does the thing that sci-fi does where it takes you out of our world and mirrors the situation in a way so you're not defensive. So I think it does a better job of doing that in Ember when we come out and then we're in Sparks and then we're in the real world. Then it also is just like, all of these people are terrible and I have 2 more sections to read. But like I said, for what it is, as a kid, I didn't like this book as much. I don't think I would have had the words to express what I am currently expressing, but I didn't dislike it as much as I do now.
Right.
It was just painful. It was just hard. I had to sit down and I'm like, I have limited time in my life. Let me read this slow burn miscommunication trope book for a couple hours. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Read it to your kids once, but you don't need to read it for fun.
I am very interested. The fact that book 3 is a prequel, I mean, we'll get to the end of this one, but I feel like it leaves off at an interesting point.
Yeah, I have no idea where it's going from here. I did not read Diamond Darkhold, so...
I'm very excited to see what's the motivation for jumping back, because it ends in such a way that if that were the end of the series, you technically could, but I'm excited there's 2 more, because I feel like there's a lot to build on.
I was so confused. I didn't read the back of the book, or maybe I did read the back of the book and I still was confused. I thought it was like centuries later and they were doing it again.
Oh.
There is no, hey, this is the past, until you get to the very end of the book and people start going to Ember and you're like, oh, this is a prequel. I thought we were continuing the storyline.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. So you have not read the last book at all?
I have not read Diamond of Darkhold, which goes back to Lena and Dune.
Yeah, I'm curious if there is going to be a jump there, or if there's going to be some information gleaned in part 3. Because, again, not to jump ahead all the way but to the end, but it ends on a pretty definitive note. We set up at the beginning of 1 that Dune really wants to look at the generator. He's an engineer. And at the end of 2, he's built his own generator. He has found a source of power. It's like the gleam of hope, the glimmer of hope that sets them onto their next chapter. So I'm very interested to see what her creative choice was to then jump backwards, and whether that's going to introduce, I mean, it's hundreds of years in the past, so it's probably not going to be like, and here's a new character who shows up in book 4, something like that.
No, I don't want to spoil it, but you know the person, when it gets to the end, you're like, oh, this is this person.
Okay, that's good to know. So I'm interested to see how that factors in and how that plays into the final chapter for Lena and Dune. Yeah, so again, I think that colors my overall impression of the book, though.
If we ended here, can you imagine?
If I didn't know it was a middle chapter, if we were in 2004, yeah, and this is the end, I would be a little bummed. But we're only halfway through the series, and so I'm like, okay, let's see where this leads. Maybe all the miscommunication will pay off in a big way. Maybe the people of Sparks will be a very important part of book 4, and the fact that there was so much strife will pay off.
Because here's the problem. The center conflict of this is obviously Ember has shown up. They know nothing. And they more than double the population of the village.
Yeah.
I appreciate the author being like, resources are a limited thing, because that is so true. So there are some YAs where it's like, oh, you just walk up and we join societies together. We have plenty of space and food and time and things. Just join. So I do like the realism of that. But the village leaders get together and they're like, okay, we can't just throw them out because they're going to die. They don't know anything. They're just going to die. And so their compromise ends up being, well, they're going to stay for 6 months and then we're going to release them, which once again, you're releasing them in winter. And even one of them kind of admits in her heart that they're just trying to assuage their own guilt, even though they know their solution is still going to cause the people of Ember to get killed, because they're going to be going out in winter with no food storage and no way to build things and no concept of what cold is. They barely have ratty clothes that they brought with them. So that is something on the table this whole time.
Right.
And eventually the people of Ember kind of catch on to that. Not that they're being about to be sent off in the winter. They don't get that. But they're getting the fact that they're not going to be able to just build a new village. And they're starting to become fond of the place that they're at. They end up putting them in this old abandoned hotel. And it's not great, but it's theirs. And so they want to start improving their living space. So they want to improve that, but they don't want to just improve it and then turn around and leave.
Right.
And in the end, they want to stay. And Sparks wants them to go. They're in their brain. They're a drain on their resources, and they're just causing all of these problems. You eventually get certain things that happen, like Torin throws tomatoes at a wall and then blames it on Ember. And then there's a couple of situations where I'm just going to spoil it because he sucks. Tick fakes attacks back on Ember. He spray paints words, well, not spray paints, but he paints go back the earth, like cavemen or whatever, on the steps, and he puts poison ivy on the steps to be like, they're trying to poison us and blah, 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 blah. And so all of the actual aggressions that have been building up are fake, thankfully, which makes for a much easier, it's okay, guys. We just needed to communicate storyline, where you do get this implication there. But all of this stuff is just building to this conflict. And while all this is going on, Lena left.
She gone.
Lena learns what a scavenger is, which is basically they go out into the suburbs, the city, and look for anything that they can sell to these villages. Things like eyeglasses, candles, matches are a really big thing. Just anything that can be used by these cities. And Torin's older brother is one of these explorers, except he sucks. But we won't worry about that. He's not that important, honestly. But he's gonna go to the city and he's claiming that he's gonna find this amazing treasure or whatever. And Lena thinks in her brain, oh, if you're talking about the city, this must be the city I always thought in my brain. And so I'm gonna go with you and I'm gonna see the state of the city, and maybe that's the place that Ember is going to be. There's already walls and stuff, and so there's infrastructure, and we can move there and start making a society for ourselves. Poor thing, come to find out, the city is destroyed.
Yeah.
There's a reason people aren't already living there, to the point where it's like, it's almost impossible to get into the city. I don't know which city it is representing, but there's a bridge to get there, and it's so destroyed, it's a whole thing.
Right.
To even get into the city. And so that's her plot line. She's just gone this entire time that war is on the horizon, and she gets back just for Dune to be like, yeah, they're about to war. And she's like, what the crap happened? I was gone for 3 days.
Poke your head in the bathroom and say, hurry up, guys, war is happening.
They do that at one point where they're like, everyone get out here, we're going to riot, and then run from their rooms and stuff. I've been watching Hell's Kitchen, and so the thing that always sticks in my head is when they do that, they're like, everybody get downstairs right now. There's always someone that was in the shower who gets out and they're like, crap, where is everybody? There's someone doing something. So I couldn't help imagine that. Like, imagine being in the bathroom when that happens. Oh, you get out and you learn there's a fire in the town square.
Zipping up zipper. Oh, no.
What do you mean? So, like I said, things have been building up. She does a really good job of having a lot of viewpoints, because we have Dune's viewpoint, we have Lena's viewpoint, we have Torin's viewpoint at the beginning of each section, but we also get Dune's dad talks about stuff, and the librarian talks about stuff, and even people from Sparks talk about stuff. And so you get a lot of viewpoints. And so a majority of this book is honestly people talking to each other, which really slows down the pacing as compared to the first book.
Right.
We have gone from solving an action adventure to moral philosophy, which is a very interesting switch.
Right. And just knowing offhand what the third book will lead up to, based on, again, the cover, which we'll get into when we talk about book 3. And just, it's a prequel, and we know what happened to get the people of Sparks into the situation they're in. Bombs are going to drop. I am very curious to see what the balance will be there. Is book 3 going to be more of the same? A moral dilemma that, in contrast with the one we saw in book 2, obviously ends in a lot of people dying? Or is it going to be something a little different? Is there going to be someone rushing against the clock to try and stop it, trying to solve something? Just because we know the end point of book 3, I am very curious to see how it all factors in together, and whether we will return to a more adventure-esque narrative for either book 3 or 4.
Honestly, the series has a wild change in genre book to book.
Interesting. That excites me.
The last book, like we said, it was a dystopian action adventure with a mystery. And then we get to this book, and it is a post-apocalyptic sitting around talking about stuff. It's not very action adventure. I mean, there's a little adventure when Lena goes off, but not really. There's not a lot of action in it. And then you go to the next one, and it's an apocalypse book. We're leading up to the apocalypse.
Right.
And so it also has this isn't spoiling anything. The narrator's a child. And so it's a child living through the apocalypse. And that's such a different different vibe than all of this. I'm curious when we get back to Diamond of Darkhold, what we're looking at there. But yeah, from book to book, it's kind of a little wild, the tone shifts. The characters stay pretty consistent. I think Dune and Lena stay pretty consistent. I think they're well done. But yeah, going from dystopian, the world is ending, we don't have enough food, what are we going to do, to kind of this post-apocalyptic, all right, well, now we have to make society. It's pretty interesting. And then we're immediately going to go to the apocalypse from here.
I appreciate a series that can shake things up. And maybe this shakeup between 1 and 2 didn't work as much, but knowing that there's more shakeups to come, that doesn't put me off. That gives me like, okay, let's see if this next shakeup works better for me.
Yeah, I agree. I would totally be down. This doesn't make me not want to read the rest of the series. It's not like, oh my goodness, this was so terrible, I can't even make it to another one. It was just, as an adult, you just see things coming a mile away, and then it's so slow to get there, and you're like, oh,
right.
I have to read 2 more parts.
I think it's important throughout this, though. The thing that allows me to, I wouldn't say accept or understand a lot of the choices made, but putting myself in the mind of the 4th grader who would be reading this. I think going back to your point about Tick and him basically stirring the pot.
Oh, that was a huge reveal. When I was younger, that was such a huge reveal to me versus when I'm reading it as an adult and I forgot the plot, honestly. The first time we're introduced to him, he's kind of heckling a leader and I'm like, oh, you're the problem child.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna be the problem.
Right.
And then we get to the end, and it's not that I remembered him doing it, although there were a couple of things I'm like, wait a second, am I remembering something? But the reveal feels less like, oh my goodness, that's crazy, to that checks out.
Interesting. Yeah, because I feel like, yeah, just to piggyback off of the reaction you had to it when you read it as a kid, I think it is a good introduction to the notion of absolute power.
Corrupts absolutely.
Corrupting absolutely. Yeah. Because you have someone who is very clearly looking to seize power and seize the momentum of the frustration and agitation of his people. And I think that is an important notion to introduce to kids who are interested in exploring literature that is about these topics and that is about social, economic, political means. But yeah, as an adult, I would have been interested to see that played up a little bit or play with my expectations a bit there. But again, for a kid who is interested in either dystopian or like geopolitical writing, I think this is a good introduction to that notion.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that the book does a really good job of pointing out the difference between charisma and merit, because he talks a really big game, and then specifically in his little projects where he's like, we're gonna do this thing, and then everyone gets excited and they start working on the project, and then he's like, oh, well, let's do this other thing, and then everyone abandons the old project to do the new project, and then that just continues to cycle through, and then by the end, none of the projects that he started ever finished.
Yeah.
People just got excited for his momentum, and so you can't just look at the words and how you like the person, you have to look at the product that they are creating with their actions. That matters so much more than their words or getting caught up into the charisma of, oh my goodness, I want him to like me, cough, cough, Lizzie.
And to the author's credit, I think that is, especially with the intended age group, I think that it contributes to the narrative. It is an important character beat that can't be overlooked and contributes to the overall overarching point in a way that, of the examples we've mentioned, I think is pretty effective in terms of talking about the relationships between people and leadership and being an asset to your community and being productive in a way that is beneficial to all members of that community. As to the broader narrative, I wish there were more really, impactful illustrations of the dynamic the author is intending to show. A lot of it, again, just comes down to miscommunication and stuff later on.
Yeah, because like I said, we can't have people actually be bad because then we wouldn't be able to resolve it so neatly. But in addition to that, I do think there's a benefit between a parent reading it with their child, because I think they'd be able to point out some really interesting things that the kid wouldn't have thought of. For example, at the end of the book, Tick ends up up deciding to go south to see another village. And his narrative as he's leaving is he's not leaving because he's a terrible person who did terrible things and want to run away from accountability and the fact that he can't be the leader anymore. They're traitors. And he needs to go find people that have, honestly, the way he was talking, better values.
Right.
So think about his entry into another village, the story he will be telling them.
Right.
I did all of these things for these people and they just betrayed us and they were traitors and blah, 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 blah. And the new people will have no reason not to believe him. And that is kind of a brain-breaking moment for a child.
Yeah.
To be like, the story you are hearing and the truth might be two very different things.
Yeah.
And the only way to get around that is perspective taking, and that requires perspective, which is hard for a kid, but just the opening up of that door of, hey, just because someone says something and they sound convincing doesn't mean that's the truth, which is crazy.
Yeah. Again, it's a good way for young readers to breach these topics and explore them in a way that is, for the most part, very compelling. Characters that are compelling for sure, even if the narrative does bulk down at times and it's a bit less of a breezy read than part one.
Yeah, this is where I'm at. Have your kid read it. Am I going to sit down and be like, hey, adult, you know what you need to read? I will go to bat for City of Ember. Absolutely. I think everyone should read it. I think it does a great job. And I think it's really entertaining and it's really good. And it's not like, oh, it's good for a midlit, which is kind of the line I feel like we're walking with this book.
Right.
Oh, it's good for a midlit. That book's just good.
It's just good. I enjoy it. Yeah.
I think anyone could get benefit out of it. It's a quick read. It's not a huge commitment. You're not sitting down for 600 pages.
Right.
But I think it's good.
Unless you're me, in which case you are sitting down for 600 pages.
I mean, yeah. If you're going to do the whole series, yes. But that's kind of where we're at. We end up saving the day because people act in kindness. Dune ends up saving Torin from a burning tree. Turns into a burning building. They get out.
Yeah.
He's saved, and so he turns around, and Lena makes him feel bad. He's like, hey, he saved you even though you falsely claimed he did the tomato thing, and so he feels bad, and so Torin's like, hey, he's not the one that did it. He doesn't say who did it, but he's like, hey, it wasn't him, and so that solves some stuff, and the kindness starts moving forward, and they're able to, like, repair relationships, and some of them are going to stay, like, a good portion of them are going to stay, and they're just going to, like, make this work. They're going to figure it out. They have decided that we are no more Ember and Sparks. We are all Sparks.
Maybe in a different time or a different world, I would have been a bit more, oh, that's the ending or whatever. But I hate that as a society, as a country, the bar is so low that I was just happy to see an ending where people got along. I was happy to see an ending where ultimately stepping in to save your fellow human beings and being empathetic and approaching people with dignity and
kindness,
trying to save people who are in danger is what wins the day. Again, maybe if I was reading this in 2004 or in 2008, I would have been like, that's stupid. But in 2026, I'm like, yeah, good job, kids. You'll be all right.
I think in any society post the turn of the century, this is an important message.
I feel like, yeah, there is a part of me, and I think especially as we get into books 3 and 4, there is a part of me that does want to dissect these books were written after 2001. There is a part of me that wants to think about that in the broader trajectory of the series.
Zeitgeist.
Yeah, the cultural zeitgeist. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Because I think that is important to factor in. As we were of the age where we were growing up, it was my first impression of America was the nationalism in late 2001 going into 2002. So
yeah, because if you do not know, Keira is British.
Just wait until we have a book where I have to say the word schedule or yogurt or a garage or anything like that. Then they'll pick up pretty quick.
You mean aluminium?
I actually don't do that one. I've always said aluminum.
Really?
Yeah, there are occasionally words that, like, my parents said it the way Americans say it, so it didn't latch on. Garage does, or yogurt, or the big one is schedule, because that's just how I've always said it. But yeah. So I feel like and it might even go into to talking about the author's broader motivations with this series as a whole is because the first one comes out in 2002, 2003. So that is all very fresh in our minds. And especially if maybe she was writing book one around the turn of the millennia, and then book two is the belated conversation with September 11th or anything like that.
It came out in 2003, May 2003.
Then I think it's fair to say, yeah.
I think she's writing it right around the time that this is relatively fresh.
Right. I think less so even beyond the visuals of catastrophic nuclear annihilation, catastrophic attacks.
Honestly, just the entire Bush administration.
Yeah, for sure. But the overarching message of the books being encouraging empathy in dark times, encouraging people to step across cultural lines and meet each other as human beings. Again, before I go into talk philosophically about it and the cultural fallout, no pun intended, of everything that happened in 2001, there is a part of me that wants to see the overarching through line of the story before I jump to any, here's what I think she's going for sort of thing. But I think the timing is of note for sure.
Yeah, and especially with book 3.
Okay, very interesting. I'm eager to read it.
I haven't read it since I was a kid, so but from my memory, it is very much, and not in a bad way. I know how something, it was a product of a time when you were terrible, like Agatha Christie using racial slurs, and you're like, that's wild. So not that product of its time, but the way she goes about the conflict and how it becomes itself. It's like reading a book from the 80s and you're like, yeah, the Cold War was on their mind. I think you can definitely feel that in the next book, how they handle things.
Very interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think you could probably have an entire podcast episode just to be like, let's dissect the world as these books were coming out.
100%.
That led to us having a massive YA dystopia boom.
100%. I feel like there's roots of it in so many of those franchises from the 2000s. Obviously, Hunger Games is 2008 is the first book, so it's a few years past, but there's roots of that all throughout so much of that. And I think it is an interesting conversation piece, that's for sure.
Hunger Games ain't coming out in 1996.
100%, yeah.
It definitely, you can separate it, but I think it does add something when you're like, oh, this is where your mindset was when you were writing this, for sure.
Yeah.
I think she's very purposeful about the things. I think she contemplates things very thoroughly and tries to look at it from all sides and then tackles it in her writing. I do think she's very nuanced with it and how she chooses to do things. So like my nitpicks, but she'd be like, yeah, but I did that on purpose. It's purposely supposed to be frustrating that they're doing it like this way. But the other part of me is, it's like the artist who is like, I've hung this at a weird angle to make you uncomfortable. And I'm over here like, this makes me uncomfortable. You know? You're like, I want to straighten it. No!
Right.
Convention. And I think she's really purposeful for that. But for my enjoyment, it was hard. It was a hard read because of that. Because you're like,
right.
This is painful. I know what's going on. I understand the miscommunications. Oh no.
Right. I understand for a kid, it might be very important to see this tension bubbling over and growing and growing and growing, and understanding that is what leads to, I'm sure, what we're going to see in the third book. That is what leads to conflict. That is what leads to violence, is this thing simmering and building and building and building and building. But also, as an adult reading it, you are kind of like, okay, I get that this is baby's first watching humans. Human.
Because would a 10-year-old potentially know winter storage? That the food that they were keeping is for winter storage, because all they have to do is go with mom and dad to the grocery store at any time of year. So even them might be siding with Ember and being like, hey, why are you having all this food and whatever, and not realizing themselves that, oh, they don't have a supermarket.
Yeah. I feel like the book does a good enough job at explaining, because of how simple its prose and writing is. I think it is pretty good at, even if it doesn't, well, we store food for the winter because there's no grocery store. They're pretty good with context clues in terms of being like, we don't have a grocery store.
Yeah. But I'm just saying there are certain things that we're like, oh my goodness, this is so obvious. But for them, it's not so obvious.
Gotcha.
So I do want to give credit to that, and space for that. But as an adult reading it, read it to your child. Read it with your child, but don't necessarily put it on your TBR.
It is definitely a book. I read them by myself, but it is 100% the sort of book that I would have read with my dad or my mom before bed. We were big into fantasy.
I read it with my mom.
Aww.
Yeah, I remember specifically having conversations with her about it. So, yeah, but I feel like the first one lends it more to you two enjoying it together, where I feel like this one is like, all right, guys, let's pony up for some conversations.
Let's learn about corruption.
And empathy and miscommunications and pride. Pride's everywhere in this book. Are we just tackling the 7 deadly sins? I'm joking. Obviously, there's only 4 books, so we can't, but...
That'd be pretty good, though.
I'm a sucker for 7 deadly sins, so I would be fine with that. But yeah, pride is definitely a piece of the conversation in this.
You know who I liked a lot that we haven't brought up is Maddie. Maddie is very cool. Maddie is my favorite.
Oh, yeah. So Maddie is someone that is traveling with Torrhen's older brother, and she knows this dude's an idiot.
Right.
At first, I'm like, oh my goodness, he got a girlfriend, and Torrhen's not understanding that he's an adult who wants a girlfriend. But no. She's like, I was in a bad situation, and I needed to get out, and this is how I got out. This dude's an idiot.
Yeah. I would love to spend more time with Maddie. She was really cool. Part of me was worried, but in my head, I was trying to predict what happens at the end with everything simmering over. And she's not only with Torrhen hating her, but she's also bringing Lena back into conflict that's about to erupt at Sparks. I was worried for her. I was like, oh man, if they kill Maddie, I'm going to be so mad. But they didn't. She sticks around, and I'm very happy. And I hope she plays a big part in 4.
Yeah, she starts working with Clary. They create a little farm for themselves.
Absolutely. She was cool. I want to see more of her in book 4.
But yeah, also part of the reason Torrhen's terrible is because he's attention seeking.
No one pays attention to him. Lena even notices that. The doctor they're staying with.
Yeah, so he's staying with his aunt, who is a doctor and the only doctor, and she has way too much work.
Yeah.
One doctor for 300 people who are doing physical labor every day? Too much. And so you have Miss Murdo learning how to be a doctor, which I thought I remembered Lena getting into it, and she's like, nah, I want to run free. And I was like, oh, okay. And so she starts working the farm that the Ember people started, which makes sense. But Miss Murdo starts learning to be a doctor, and I think that'll really benefit them. By the end of the book, the villagers, instead of looking, oh, what can I teach you, which is barely what they're doing, they're just like, we don't know what to do with you, so we're just going to give you a bunch of labor, and hopefully you'll figure it out. But by the end of the book, they're legitimately looking to be like, okay, how can we come together? And that includes the Ember people creating a currency with matches.
Yeah.
Where it's like, for a thing of clothes, I'll give you 2 matches or whatever. And so they become part of the economy. They create this farm with foods that Sparks people have never even seen before. And so that begins to help the society. Like I said, Miss Murdo is going to become another doctor. And so they honestly start looking at how to solve the problem together instead of treating each other like the problem, which is a great thing about conflict. Don't come into conflict being like, you're the problem. Come into the conflict being like, okay, here is the problem. How are we together going to solve this? And that's what changes by the end of the book. Is it goes from us and them mentality, which is so rampant nowadays, to that forward thinking, all right, let's solve this together. And then you see how, even from the end of this book, how they begin to benefit from it. They're like, this isn't going to be easy, but more hands by next fall. Like, you're going to have more people working the fields and doing more stuff. And so in the end, they're going to make it. They just had to make a really hard decision.
Right.
And then have the empathy to work together to create a solution for this.
Yeah.
So I think that does a really good... There's a lot of things it does a really good job with, and I'm really impressed by, but this is not pleasure reading for me.
But overall, the pacing left something to be desired. I agree.
General thoughts on this? This is so simplified. Think about this. These people have been underground for 220 something. They come out and they meet a society that has been above ground for these 200 years. And you know what they don't have?
What?
A language barrier.
There were little things like that I was willing to accept.
They have no language barrier. They have no disease that comes about.
I was willing to accept the lack of disease, the fact that they weren't so pale and hurt by even stepping out into the sun. There are little contrivances I was okay with for the sake of getting to the bigger overarching point of the narrative.
The fact that, there wasn't genetic modifications to them where living underground for so long.
Right.
That they had things that were different. I mean, they mentioned, they're pale and smaller than us, but that was kind of it. And they have sunburns, but they don't get sun sickness a lot. They can still go out in the fields and do all this manual labor, which some of them did manual labor in Ember, but most of them didn't. Like I said, the disease wasn't a thing. Language barrier isn't a thing. I'm literally looking at my Gen Alpha nephew and he'll say things and I'm like, what is coming out of your mouth? And so it's very simplified for that reason. It works out, but I definitely think as an adult, you're like, wait a second. I remember the quote-unquote, frankly, European discovery of America.
Right.
I remember how that went down.
100%.
A lot of people died.
Many, many, many people died.
And not necessarily from the violence, from disease, from famine, from exposure, from sicknesses to the foods. You're introducing food groups to people who have not had these food groups.
Right.
No food allergies, no adverse effects. They're eating eggs, and I don't think they have cows, but they're eating eggs for the first time in their life. You're adding a new form of protein. They're getting fish for the first time in their life. No food allergies. We're completely fine. No intolerances. So very simplified, but this, I think you put it best. Babies first, socio-political crisis.
Exactly.
For sure. But it is fun a little bit, because you're like, wait a second, Ariel's only 16. One of those moments.
Exactly.
It doesn't hurt the book in any way. It's still the conflict between child and parent and stuff. You can still get onto it and you're like, yeah, I tried it. What you did was kind of lame. I get why you did it. But yeah, you still hit moments where you're like, Ariel. And then you ask the questions, but if she's she's a mermaid, but she's kind of a nymph. So doesn't that mean she lives longer than Eric? Wait a second.
Yeah.
Anyway, you don't need to add all of that to enjoy the movie, but you can have a fun moment of wait.
Yes.
If you want to, just to have fun with it. I don't know. I think it's a new way to interact with the source material where you're like, well, what would I have added if I wanted to add even more nuance?
Yes.
If I was an adult writing this for adults, what would I add?
There's definitely a line between having fun thinking about those angles and only thinking about those angles when you approach any piece of media and being obnoxious about it or whatever. There's definitely a difference. And so I think it's all in good fun. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This is Edgar Allan Poe getting to the moon in a hot air balloon. Fine.
Absolutely.
But take this for what it is. It's good for what it is, but it hits the mark for me of the first book being good and then this one needing the qualifier, it's good for a midlet.
Yes. I just think the first book is a tough act to follow. And I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt and see how the wider series pays off.
And it's one of those things, it could be a situation, and it happens to so many people. You write the first book and you shop it around, and so you edit it and you edit it and you edit it and you edit it. And then you get a contract and they're like, cool, write 3 more.
100%. Yeah.
And we're releasing the next one, next year.
Right.
So there is that to consider, and I do wonder, low-key, if that's part of it. That's not my question to the author, but just something I'm curious about, where it's like, maybe the first one is so great because it had that time to cook.
Yeah.
And then this one, it was like, literally next year, this is publishing.
Right.
Go for it.
The publishing world is wild. It would not surprise me if that were the case.
Honestly. One question for the author, though. Why did the builder elders give them no supplies. Imagine, they believe the world is coming to an end, that people will not exist on the surface, and that is why they've gone to the extremes to create a society underground that can survive for 200 years because they think it is impossible to live on the surface because of the radiation. And they have this box, they have these instructions, they put them on boats with candles and matches, they get to the place,
and then they're like, see ya.
Good luck.
Good luck. You got it from here. I believe in you.
They just are so meticulous in the last book, having all this stuff ready for them, and they just give them no supplies. Like, there's nothing at the end of the tunnel except, hey, here's the surface. That is one thing where I'm like, wait a second. What the heck, guys? I'm sure she loves that question.
My question for the author is less narrative centric and not to rehash things we already talked about.
But to totally rehash them.
My question would just be about, A, when she wrote this and how it related to the broader ongoing climate of the early 2000s. And then also, did she fully intend to, because if this is 2004, prequels in 2006, did she map out that she knew she was going to do a prequel next to it before books, etc.? Or did she think it was just going to be a sequel? So she intended to end the whole series with that final scene. I would be curious about that.
When she decided to do the prequel?
But whether initially it was just going to be 2 books and then she just decided to keep going and do the prequel and then book 4 and her motivation for that overall. I'm sure we could find old interviews with her and figure this out before our next episode. But I am curious about, because it is such a dramatic shift from book 1 to book 2. And again, there will be dramatic shifts again if what you're alluding to is correct, which I'm excited about. Yeah, no, just seeing how the broader landscape around her may have impacted the overarching narrative for this specific book.
Rating, potato clock out of 10.
I was going to give this, I could do half numbers, which is great, unlike on Goodreads. So I'm going to give this 3 light bulbs that are fully glowing and then a 4th light bulb that's flickering a little bit. It's like, so like 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah. So this book ends with him creating a potato battery.
I did, yes.
The reason I picked this specifically, obviously parallels with the book, but it's good for what it is.
Right.
He's not about to introduce electricity to sparks anytime soon, but it's this basic understanding. If he can make this electricity, maybe he can figure out the rest of it. And the reason he figures it out is because he gets a 6th grade science fair book. So that is where I'm at with this. This is good for what it is and what it's doing, but you're not gonna solve world hunger with it. I mean, not that the first one would either, but
for sure.
But it's good for what it is, and that's probably where we need to lead it a bit. You need to understand its limitations here and account for that in your reading.
I mean, same with my light bulbs. We got, not only is it numerical, because 3.5 out of 5 or whatever, but also we got 3 really solid characters, solid setting, pretty solid, overarching themes, pretty solid, but then pacing, that's the light bulb that's flickering right there. It's flickering, it's flickering.
So slow. Read again.
Only if I were doing the whole series. There's definitely been books in broader, wider YA series where I will pick out one specific one to reread. That's not the case here. If I were like reading 1 through 4 in order, assuming I really like 3 and 4, which just based on everything I know about them, I probably will, then yes, I would read 2 again, but I'm not actively going out of my way to read The People of Sparks again without the broader context of the whole series.
Yeah, I'm not picking it up in like, you know what I really want to read? Because I agree with you. I'm a completionist. I can totally see myself in 5 years being like, I'm going to read this series or reading it with my child. I'm not against the concept of it, but I'd pick it up with a purpose. I wouldn't pick it up for pleasure.
That makes sense.
And I think that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Favorite of the series so far is so obviously Ember.
Yeah, 100%.
I'd pick Ember up right now and read it again. I love that book so much. I think it has so much to offer. The simplification of it is part of what works so well.
Yes.
Every decision made in it feels like it was the right decision. The movie decided, screw all of you, like the mayor, you know. But The book itself, is so good.
Yeah.
It should be taught in schools. I'll go that far.
Wow.
Yeah. I think little 4th, 5th graders would benefit from this a lot. And with teachers' guidance.
Yeah, 100%. I'm excited for the last half of the series. And you know what else I'm excited for? Kingdom Keepers 2. That's when I'll next be on.
Disney at Dawn. But have you read this book? Ever made a battery out of materials? And you can also do it with citrus fruit. There's a couple things you can make batteries from. I don't know.
It's pretty good.
Have you ever been in a conflict that's stupid? Like, I don't know. I'm trying. Do you have any book recommendations? Tell us all about it in the comments below. If you like the video, hit like. And if you're enjoying yourself, hit subscribe for more. Thank you for exploring the people of Sparks with us. Join us next time when we'll be covering Divergent by Veronica Roth. I'm Sam Reiner.
And I'm Keira.
And we hope to see you and a friend here next time. Escape With Me Book Club is a Lunar Skulk production. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok to keep up to date with us. Lunar_SKULK.